What we gardena in jaar dagum, fead kiniga thrim gifrunan, ho the ethalingus ellen fremedan, oft skid scafing, scathena theatum, moningun megum, medo setla oftea, exode eorlas. Sitten arrest weird, fiskar funden, he thas fofre gebad, wex under volcum, weird minden tha, off that him eglis imbecitra, over Hronrad, Hiren skolda, gomben glidan. That was good kinging. So that's my version in my relatively bad Old English accent, kind of a fake German accent, of the opening 11 lines of the poem Beowulf. I have a link up on the Google Doc that you can get a much better, so kind of professional reading by a professor who's a better linguist than I am. But I think it's helpful as we dive into the first few sections of Beowulf and get introduced to the hero to think about how the poem sounds in its original. One thing that's important to notice is Old English poetry is built around two techniques, alliteration and the caesura. So every line in the poem is divided into two half lines. You can, I hope, hear them in the reading that I did, and you can also see them if you look at the Old English transcription up on your Google Doc. And that repetition of the initial consonant sound. So, for example, we gardena and yar dagum, the repetition of the G in that line. And, you know, you get similar kinds of repetitions in every line of the poem. That is essentially the Old English equivalent of rhyme. It's a poem that doesn't use end rhyme the way modern English does, but it uses instead alliteration. The other thing that I would say about this opening and its description of the king shield sheafing is that he's like Beowulf in one sense, that he is unusual, that there's sort of two different kinds of kings in this story. There are kings who get to be kings because they inherit the throne from their fathers. Among those kings, we include Hrothgar, who we'll meet a little bit later in the poem, the king of Sweden. But the more interesting kind of kings are kings like Skjold and Beowulf himself, who don't inherit the thrones. They become kings because of their own unusual or almost supernatural qualities. And the difference between a king who's sort of a human king who ascends in the line of normal succession and these extraordinary creatures like Skjold and Beowulf himself, who, even though they aren't sort of born to be king, they have to become king because of their extraordinary qualities. So we'll talk a little bit like that and the way in which Beowulf's extraordinary qualities make him in some ways more like the monsters than he is like the other humans as we go through the first couple sections of the poem this week and next week.